And our next speaker will also talk about strategies, but not for governments, I presume. I think he has not founded a country yet, but I can't be sure because before co-founding Merantix, the world's first AI venture studio here in Berlin, he sold his previous company for 100 million euros, and that would buy you a little banana republic, I presume. I'm not sure. Please welcome a serial entrepreneur that has started more than 10 companies in Europe and the US in a wide range of fields, Adrian Locher. Give it up for Adrian.
So thanks a lot. Thank you very much for this warm welcome. And I have to say, probably as for most of us, it's a premiere for me to have this kind of format. I'm looking forward. And when Fabian invited me to talk about strategy, well, my first thought was, this is exactly the thing I'm not going to talk about today. But I will also tell you why. Because I think we have done a lot of strategies in the past, especially when it comes to AI, and I was following some of the conversations on stage here before, and a lot of the notion was, yeah, okay, so we did a lot of planning, we have a lot of ideas, but we fail in actually getting it done. So this is what I would like to talk about today. So I'm not going to talk about strategy, but about actually building something and what it takes to do so. So let's have a look at a few numbers that I think are pretty interesting, because I think we have a lot of ingredients here. We just fail short in actually putting them together. So let's look at researchers, for example, in the space of AI. If we count them on a per capita base, actually Germany, and most probably as a good example for Europe, has more researchers than US and China together. However, we fail short in transfer, which a good idea is if you look at the investments that happen in those spaces, in the space of AI. So if you think about Germany and you've listened to a lot of the talks this morning, you also get a pretty good idea. We have actually really, really great research in Germany, in Europe. In fact, we have the top research institutions in AI. We have amazing companies, we have amazing industry players. We are probably the best in doing hardware. We have won most of manufacturing, and we still are really, really good in that. We have a lot of companies who are world leading in their field, and they all have everything that it actually takes to get to the next stage. Still, a lot of them don't make the transfer from being a great hardware player to becoming a great software player. On the talent side, I think also, again, based on all our research institutions, we have access to the best talent that you have. However, also there, we somehow fail short in assembling these elements and putting things together. And I'll come to that in a bit, how we can solve that. But first of all, let me tell you why we believe AI is the most important technology in the 21st century. At Merantix, as a venture studio, so far we have built 5 companies in the medical field, in the biotech field, in the data management, data infrastructure field, and causal reasoning field, which is a BI company. We are about to build 2-3 new companies next year. Our fund strategy is to build 10 companies in the next 4 years. We are assembling teams, we're finding solutions, we're validating ideas, we are creating the traction, and then building a product that actually has a great market value and is viable in the market. So we're not only planning and strategizing, but we're actually doing. And this doing part is what I'd like to talk about in the next couple minutes. So let's look at what actually are the important problems if you look at AI solutions. So first of all, you need a ton of data, and usually a ton of data is not even enough because the quality of the data is actually quite important. So you need to assemble a lot of different data points on the same subject in order to get a full picture. And usually what makes life so hard are the edge cases in building successful AI applications. And those edge cases actually, they require very specific data points that usually you don't find out there. So you first need to create it. So that gives you some scaling problems, especially in the beginning. Then we have actually research that goes very fast. So right now, I think if you look at natural language processing, for example, 2-3 years ago, most of the stuff that we look at today still didn't work. Yet today, the whole world has changed, and most people talk about language in a way like vision and image happened about 8 years ago when we had this famous ImageNet Google moment when actually vision was almost solved, and we're now looking into language getting solved very rapidly. So there's every month there are new breakthroughs in science and research that are actually very relevant for the application side. However, when you then look at the sales effort, how you are selling AI solutions, then you look at very lengthy B2B sales cycles, where often it takes like 6 to 12 months before you can actually get a client on board. So there's a big mismatch in that. Also, if you look at the technology behind all this, the machine learning models, we see them as kind of a general purpose technology. So we don't believe the technology itself will provide a big enough moat to build successful, long-term, viable companies. It's more what you actually do using this technology that enables you to build really sustainable business models. So in a way, when you look at machine learning environments and machine learning infrastructure, a couple of years ago, you had to invest a lot of time, a lot of engineering resources to build your basic infrastructure so that you could start training your models. Now today, you have TensorFlow, you have PyTorch, and many, many other frameworks that are just commoditizing this space. So before that, there was still a niche for companies providing this infrastructure. And that's just an example how fast-paced this commoditization goes, which in essence means this is not going to be an interesting model in a long-term perspective. Then another actually quite important part of what we're seeing when we build companies is you cannot get to 100% automation. And everybody who sells that is actually failing, and sometimes failing quite prominently. So what I mean with this is, if you look at our medical imaging firm, Avara, the company in the radiology, breast cancer early screening space, there the company does automate 50% of the cases, and the other 50% get routed to a doctor who still looks at them and takes care of the more complex ones. Of course, every year the level of automation will grow bigger because our engine is actually observing the doctors at their work and is learning from every single move a doctor does. But still, today, it would be completely unrealistic to expect the machine taking over 100%. And of course, this human in the loop is changing the economic situation of a business model. And so you need to find smart ways how to factor that in. And if you look at self-driving, that's another example where it becomes very, very obvious. Level 5 will not happen any soon, and it still requires a human in the loop if you want to go to a level 5 automation now. And that, of course, gives some pressure from the investment side as well. So if you look at how to invest in an AI company, it's an entirely different method than if you invest in consumer internet firms. And that's also one of the reasons why US investors, until today, and also the Chinese ones, feel much more comfortable in investing in those moonshot ideas because they have been investing in those kind of businesses. You know, when you think about Silicon Valley, the name says it all. It has been growing in the space of silicon, and silicon was always a billion investment business, so you cannot build computer chips without investing billions. And that just brings a total different attitude if you look at investing. So, and here I come to my take-home message. What it actually takes to build successful AI products and also companies is you need to assemble the right ecosystem. And also that's what we should be focused on here in Germany, here in Europe, to actually make sure we create the right seeding ground, the right foundation to build successful AI applications. So we need to bring those fields together to an actual ecosystem where we have very strong ties between the partners, between the players, where we make sure that information is traveling super fast, where we're making sure that also as we speak, as we plan, as we strategize, we also start doing. I think that's one of the main issues I have with our European culture. You know, when we think about self-driving cars, for example, the US culture is like, okay, once a car does less accidents than humans do, that system is good to go. In Europe, we're like, yeah, the system is good to go as soon as it does 0 mistakes, then it can go on the road. Well, there's an obvious divergence here. So let me talk a bit about the experience we have made at Merantix. We have now been iterating our ecosystem over the last 4 years. Merantix was founded in 2016. We're now a team of almost 100 people, over 6 companies. As I said, there will be 10 more companies in the next 4 years. Let me give you some insight on what we do and how we do it. So first of all, we are probably one of the most amazing talent machines when it comes to AI talents. That's something I can say without blushing because I know we have one of the best machine learning teams in Europe. How we do that is actually we have built our reputation, our brand, our team in a way that today we are getting dozens of applications every single day, and I have the luxury of looking at over 50 candidates per one hire I do. And that makes a whole difference because I no longer only recruit the smartest, but also the nicest and much more important, of course, the most socially skilled people who make really great teamwork, which is in essence what you need to have if you are working on these really difficult problems building AI solutions. Because one thing that is very clear is, and that's also where the today's system of academia comes to an issue. All AI problems are multi-transdisciplinary, and you need teams that work alike. So you need to assemble teams with very diverse backgrounds, with very, very diverse languages. I need to bring them together and make them work. AI is all about know-how. So we have built a lot of different formats inside our company, how know-how travels, how know-how is transferred. We have weekly sessions, paper reading groups, deep dives with a lot of external people also joining, talking on very specific topics. We were one of the founding partners of the German AI Association, which is also very prominently here today. Already seen Vanessa. And we make sure that, it's not only about building businesses, but also it's about moving science ahead and again, also here, bringing the right people together. We also provide funding, so we decided not to rely on external investors for our company only. We have built 3 first companies from our own balance sheet over the first 3 years, and we have raised our first fund, or we have announced and raised our first fund just this year. That is a 25 million fund backed by major US institutional investors. That's, of course, also one of the things I wanted to highlight here. Yes, it's US institutional investors, and yes, European institutional investors are still very hard to come by because they have a very different tradition on investing, and they have a very different appetite for risk and reward, of course, because a lot of these US institutionals are so bullish for VC because they have made very, very good experience over the last 40, 50 years in actually getting returns that no other asset class was able to provide. Last but not least, it's all about also connecting industry and connecting with the right players. We do not only build ventures, but we also have built one of our portfolio companies who is very deep into Germany's and Europeans' industry, doing a lot of project work and exploring a lot of new fields. Also sometimes at the brink of research and public funded research and business. So we at the same time usually run 4 or 5 European funded projects. We just started another project with Fraunhofer. We're in with ETH. We're in with Max Planck. So there's a lot of things going on, and we try to kind of concert this. And also, what is very important, we do not try to own everything, but we rather try to provide the right kind of base and also kind of an open source attitude. So all the companies under our umbrella, they are part of an open research agreement, which lets them share everything with all other companies, including data, including contracts, including whatever you can think of. And there's a clear set of guidelines and code of conduct what they can do with it. And so I would like to conclude my speech with what this all leads to. So, so far, as I said, we have built a couple companies. We all co-locate them under the same roof. And just this year, we decided, okay, let's give this whole thing a shot. Let's try to think our ecosystem at Merantix like 10 times bigger, and let's open it up for others to join it. So we decided to actually plan and build our own campus, which is going to be opening in April next year. It's going to be on 5,000 square meters. It's 5 minutes away from Nordbahnhof. And it's going to be, creating space for more than 450 people. And that probably are going to be 20, 30 different teams. It's going to be startups, but also corporate venture, but also corporate machine learning teams, research, academia, and also investors. It's basically our vision to create this seeding ground for AI in Berlin, but also kind of acting as a role model for others. And my personal belief is that the way we do work in machine learning is a very good blueprint that can also be used for other deep tech spaces. So we would like to be very open there also to inspire others to build this kind of ecosystem for other deep tech areas, which I believe is very, very significant and important for us here to make sure our prosperity is continuing. Couple pictures, but most important, go and have a look. It's online, and the building is there, so you can also go and have a physical look. It will be open in April 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, and of course, we all hope that we can, when it's open, all visit you without fear of COVID or anything. Maybe this will be behind us next year, so good luck with this. We don't have too many questions from our audience, but I want to encourage you to still ask a lot of questions. We have a couple. I have tons more. Maybe start with this one. How can companies who aren't Merantix attract the resources, like capital, talent, industry know-how, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, 49 people stay unhired when you pick 1 out of 50, right?
So, can you repeat the question?
Right. How can companies who aren't Merantix attract the resources?
Well, it's all about the teams. So it's all about the initial team. So the reason why we have this factor today is how we started, right? So we started with a couple really crazy, smart, and nice guys and people in a room, and we have built our company around this. We have made sure that our hiring bar stays very, very high all the time, no matter how urgently we need people. So we have never made compromises. And we have tried to create an environment where the smartest people love to come and work with others, which is usually, it's not that hard, right? Smart people want to work with other smart people, and they want to have a nice environment. They don't need too many perks, so we're not a perk company. I think the campus will be really cool, and it will have some kind of perks, but it's not about the perks. It's about the people you have in your team, and making sure that you have a clear set of values you use in hiring.
Right. Thank you. What are the strengths of Berlin for AI? And maybe I want to add, why not Zurich? Why not the Silicon Valley? Why not Beijing?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been living in Zurich before. I've been living in San Francisco, and I've deliberately chosen Berlin. First of all, because we have chosen Europe to build Merantix. So I was living in San Francisco when we decided to build Merantix, so it was a deliberate decision to do it in Europe. And then we have looked at very different cities, and we ended up choosing Berlin. The one major factor, I believe, is we felt like Berlin is a place where I can make people move to from all over the world. So that was an assumption, a hypothesis, when we started in 2016.
Right. The Berghain factor.
So today we can definitely tick that. We have in our team, I think, over 30 nations. And 80% of the people working for us, actually, on one of our companies, actually moved to Berlin to work for us.
Great. And is that also like an asset for investors? Do they like to invest in Berlin companies and come visit?
Yeah, I think if you look at U.S. investors who are so far investing a lot in the U.S. and also Silicon Valley, of course they see the bang for the buck. That is just much better because my cost of living in Berlin are just like, I don't know, a third or a fourth of what cost of living are in San Francisco, and of course that directly translates into your cost base as a company, where usually salaries are the most important factor. Right.
You were talking about the research and then the transfer, right, into products. And I think you put it this way: one is the ingredients, and then you only have the job of putting it together. And I want to challenge that. I mean, isn't that the exact problem? Like putting it together, isn't that where you either make money or you lose money? I mean, in Berlin, you probably have noticed by now, many people have a project, not so many people start a company, right?
Well, you know, I think, yeah, we have all the ingredients and we fail to put them together. And of course, putting them together is incredibly hard.
Right.
So it's not that this is easy, but my message is there is no reason why we need to stay and lag behind in comparison to the US or even China. We have all the factors. We just need to be a bit more bold in putting them together. We need to risk more. We need to change our attitude towards technology, I think, not seeing it as an adversary, but as an enabler of wealth over the last hundreds or even thousands of years, and embracing this and not stopping to push.
Right. It's very interesting because I see a theme here today, right? I think in Hans' talk, he was talking about like, we're not hungry. We're not really hungry in Germany. I think Chris was talking about the lack of maybe being wild and creative. I was reminded of this old like Apple advertising slogan, like stay hungry, stay foolish. I have the feeling we are neither in Germany, right? Do you really think that like one company or 6 companies under one roof can change this?
Not now, not now, okay. Or not yet. But we're just at the beginning here, and we definitely have bigger visions for what we do. And yeah, you know, maybe one of the driving factors for Rasmus and myself, we are the founders of Merantix. Rasmus will be here tomorrow. I think one of our core drivers or key drivers is we want to do things. We want to be role models to inspire others to follow us. So instead of, you know, trying to convince everyone first, we just move ahead, we do it, we get it done, and we try to inspire others to do the same. And I think in general, as a society, we need to embrace the fact that we are living in a very comfortable world here as a society, and we have achieved a lot. However, if I look at history in a grand scheme of things, all societies that have stopped being hungry and innovative, they imploded at some point.
Right.
And I would really hate to see us going that path.
Right. I won't ask you where we are on the innovation doomsday clock yet, but Ilke has a very good question, and I must disclose, of course, for all politicians watching, this is now like free advice, right? Free consulting. Ilke's question is, if you could make the decisions for Germany's AI future, what would be your next step?
I would make it a national priority, first of all. I would invest in research, but also the transfer and the application. Mm-hmm. I would also invest in the early education. I think there we have a core issue of not understanding software and technology enough. I think that's 2 very easy ones, for me at least. I would also set up a lot of different investment vehicles with different strategies, not trying to figure things out ahead, but by actually doing them. I think I would try to push much more on the doing side and also publicly embrace that making mistakes is okay, and start to do so by setting examples, by having government agencies fail more and make it public and also make it okay that it's like that. I think that's a couple of ideas that I have top of my
Right.
top of my mind.
Very interesting. I think if you don't fail in small details, right, then you're bound to fail in the large scope, which is probably what many people would say about politics today. Very, very interesting. Thank you. I was very delighted that you said you can hire the nicest guys, or that you are hiring the nicest guys, because they're probably all qualified or overqualified. This is something which is not very commonly done, I think, in the tech world. Like, there are people, gurus like Steve Jobs, famous for picking the A-list people, but it was always the hard skills, never the soft skills, right? So why do you do that, and how did this change your whole way of working and your company?
You know, I think when I need to solve a very hairy problem that can be solved by one person, it doesn't really matter how nice this person is,
Right.
how social this person is. He just needs to be incredibly brilliant and talented. Now, if I start solving hairy problems that are multidisciplinary, I end up needing a lot of different people in the same room. And I need collaboration to happen. And I cannot have collaboration if people don't want to work with each other, don't enjoy working with each other. So, you know, I've been investing in companies for over 10 years now, and everywhere where I was losing money, it was always the team failing first. So it's not technology, it's not the market, it's not the product that fails first, it's always the team that at some point starts to break, and then ripple effects, the other things also fail. So it's all about the team, and I think my previous company was extremely successful and also much more successful than any other competitors in that space, because we just had a better team, and not only a more intelligent, but a team that was collaborating much better at the brinks of the fields and combining things.
I'm not sure if you know or if people give you that feedback, but do you have the impression that working with nicer people also makes you nicer, maybe also makes you a nicer boss?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I really try not to hire assholes, and I try also not to be an asshole, because I don't see a point in being an asshole. And I'm not saying that good leadership does not sometimes also involve making hard decisions. And making hard decisions will also be that some people will say, well, but I don't like this decision. And I maybe even hate the decision. But I think there is a big difference in, disagreeing on a topical level or having a fight on a personal level, which I think is unnecessary and also very unproductive.
Right. Right. Thank you very much. Well, I hope that that is true. I was afraid that people would probably not give you honest feedback, but you seem quite nice to me, at least as long as we're standing on the same stage. Let me just ask you one final question. You were telling us how you were building your ecosystem and how valuable and successful it was for you, but you were hoping like for an ecosystem explosion, right? You have something like 10, 20, 100 times bigger than what you offer. What if that bigger, larger ecosystem does not form around at least Merantix in Berlin? What would you do? Like, take the company on the road? Or what is your idea for a worst case, if you have one?
Worst case. Well, I tend to not think about having a plan B. I tend to try to make the plan A successful, even though it might end up being plan A2 or A3.
A plus, yeah.
Or A plus, right? So, no, I think essentially, what we try to do is we try to connect a lot of people also outside the AI world, which is anyways happening very naturally, because usually we engage in different spaces, as you probably have seen from our companies. So right now we're very keen for synthetic biology, so we're doing a lot in that space. We just start to look into quantum We start to look into neuroscience a bit more. And everywhere we go, we try to bring new people together, which is not necessarily always creating new business for us, but we know that in the long term, it helps to build new kind of ecosystems.
Thank you very much. As a guy born and raised in Berlin, let me tell you, welcome to Berlin. I'm really glad to have Merantix. I hope you will succeed in opening the doors, having the doors wide open next April, and I wish you a lot of success. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Adrian Locher.
Thank you.
Thank you.